there's such a hunger for information about this case.
True.
It's a desperate kind of hunger among the journalists who are covering it, who want to know more, because really so very little has come out about the investigation, about the family, about anything.
These tabloid photographers have ruined our lives. They are printing false information. They stalk us. They stalk my child.
She was very artistic, like her mother, and she would say that she wanted to be an artist. And then maybe the next day she might want to be an ice skater. She thought that was beautiful and she wanted to do that. She thought she might like to ride horses. And she thought that one day, she said she wanted to be a veterinarian. And I'm sure that she could have been very successful in any one of those things. But now she is in heaven. And I'm sure she's a very good angel.
Reverend Hoverstock died in October 2015 from cancer. Originally from Buffalo, New York, he went west to the University of Colorado for college and then spent time with an AmeriCorps Vista program in Florida trying to fight poverty, according to his obituary. Then he moved back to Colorado, got married, and opened a bike shop in downtown Boulder. He became a minister while running his bike shop, which was called The Spoke.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Who would have thought the good old Reverend might have some connection to the bicycle narrative? I don't want to get into too much detail, but the bicycle narrative is a curiously hinky aspect of the Ramsey case, arguably as hinky as the ransom note and the no snow myth. Briefly, there are multiple contradictory statements about the bicycles, with John, Patsy and Burke all seemingly giving different versions on bikes. Burke said as recently as 2016, "We both got bikes." That was on Dr. Phil.
Do you remember what you did that morning?
I remember peeking down, and I remember seeing like an electric train and a bike, and I was super excited.
Was JonBenét with you?
Yeah.
Did she peek too?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Did you get what you had asked for that year?
Nintendo 64.
And what did JonBenét get?
I think she got a big dollhouse. We both got bikes.
And do you remember Patsy said during her second interview in 1998, when the cops had figured all the priority stuff they needed to talk to the Ramseys about, she said that JonBenét and herself got bikes. Let's go back to that transcript. Patsy Ramsey. Well, all of this stuff right here was from FAO Schwartz in New York. JonBenét got a bicycle that year. I got a university bicycle. And she got a twin doll, which I mail ordered, and Tom Haney. Did she get to ride her bike? Patsy, she got to ride her bike. Tom Haney, Christmas Day, Patsy Ramsey, out in the back driveway. And John, when confronted with an exterior photo of the house, image number 101, showing lines across the lawn, John volunteered that Patsy, JonBenét, and himself got bikes, and Burke didn't because Burke already had one. John Ramsey, these tracks in the snow here might have been bicycle tracks, Lou Smit. That's in photograph 101, John Ramsey, right. It wasn't unusual for him, meaning Burke, to ride through the yard, Lou Smit. Did you say he had a bicycle that Christmas? John Ramsey. Doesn't really answer the question. He says, I got a bicycle. I think that's what it was. I gave myself a bicycle. Lou Smit. That Christmas, John Ramsey, yeah. Patsy got a bicycle, I got a bicycle, JonBenét got a bicycle, Burke already had one, I'm pretty sure. I don't know what it is, I guess. So I guess he didn't really even know the type of bike Burke had. Now this gains potentially even more import when we consider, although there were no footprints in the snow, there did seem to be obvious bicycle tracks in the snow. And this can be clearly seen in crime scene photo number 82. Look on the left-hand side there. And although this is not the image John and Lou Smit were referring to, we can see what they noticed in the snow. We don't have image number 101, but we do have image number 99 taken from the rear of the house. And crime scene photo number 100 also taken from the back of the house. By the way, that blue van you see parked out front belongs to John Fernie. Now, this suggests that the bicycle tracks in the snow John is referring to in image 101 are from the rear of the house. We also know that John and Patsy said that the very last thing JonBenét and Burke did was ride their bikes in the rear area of the house. Did anyone else witness the Ramsey children riding their bikes in that area at that time? Cumulatively, with all of this information, we can begin to draw an inference which raises the following question. Let's put it on screen. Could a bicycle have left the Ramsey home in the middle of the night, and if so, whose bicycle? And if so, who was riding it? And now let's get back to the fact that Reverend Hoverstock owned and ran a bicycle store. It's a very interesting point, isn't it? Because there's a real discrepancy in this area about bicycles, and a struggle to gain clarity on what ought to be a simple question. How many bikes are we dealing with? Well, how hard could it be to answer such a simple question? If you boil down the whole Ramsey case to just this question, how long would it take to solve? Well, you might think not very long. And you may remember, according to Patsy Ramsey, she said that she bought 2 bicycles that year, one for herself and another for JonBenét at University Bicycles. One of those bicycles was hidden at a neighbor's, but the other evidently was not. Now, when I was in Boulder 2 years ago in May 2024, I did something I'd been meaning to do for some time. I went to University Bicycles in Boulder. I went inside and I asked them this very question. How many bicycles did you guys sell to the Ramseys that Christmas? Now, you'd imagine something like that would have become law. I mean, for the initiated, this bicycle shop had become, in a sense, world famous, probably also very famous in terms of Boulder. So surely the locals, employees, and even cyclists, clients essentially, were discussing this amongst themselves. And so I thought going there, it would be a quick and simple solution to the mystery. Go inside, ask a question, get an answer.
So easy. So simple.
Instead, I think I was told only the owner could answer that question. Okay, well, where's the owner? I think they told me that he was in Costa Rica or something. And when I asked for contact details, I think they said that he was off the grid. So, yeah, that was the end of that. No answer to that question. Now, this is admittedly a long shot, but is it possible the bicycles weren't actually purchased from University Bicycles and they were actually purchased from Reverend Hoverstock? And if something had happened involving bicycles that night, was he perhaps asked to keep their purchase private? The other thing that emerges about Hoverstock as a peripheral figure was that he died prior to the 20-year anniversary of the Ramsey case, and he died of cancer just like Patsy, just like Lou Smit's wife. In fact, Smit's wife had a recurrence of cancer slap bang during the run-up to the grand jury trial in 1998. So Hoverstock died of cancer in 2015. Patsy died of cancer 9 years earlier in 2006. Did Patsy's cancer play a role in making Reverend Hoverstock more sympathetic to the Ramseys, Patsy in particular, just as the likes of Detective Lou Smit and also Detective Linda Arndt seem to feel particularly sorry for Patsy? The answer is unknown, but it's difficult to believe that Patsy having cancer to begin with, remember she also had cancer prior to 1996, and she was in remission at the time of this incident. It's difficult to believe that Patsy having cancer isn't relevant somehow, and since Patsy felt she was miraculously cured, did Reverend Hoverstock really want to cross swords with one of the staunchest members of his congregation? Now, if we start to focus on Hoverstock as a peripheral figure in his own right, the perspective shifts dramatically, and there are some dramatic revelations that come to the fore, some that are truly shocking and pretty gripping, let me tell you. Have a look at this excerpt from Bustle. Hoverstock was the Ramseys' pastor who was called over that same morning. So Hoverstock went to the family's home to counsel his parishioners. While there, he led everyone in the Lord's Prayer, and that's about all that is known about Hoverstock's actions that day. Why? Because he has never spoken to the media about the case. Now, that in itself is interesting. Bear in mind that the Reverend was literally by Patsy's side when JonBenét's body was brought into the lounge. That's a crucial period. And Patsy addressed him, Hoverstock, when she saw JonBenet on the carpet. To revisit that moment, let's go to Perfect Murder, Perfect Town. Finally, Barbara Fernie led Patsy by the hand towards JonBenet. Patsy threw herself on her daughter's body. She pleaded with Reverend Hoverstock to bring her daughter back to life. Then Patsy raised herself onto her knees, lifted her arms straight into the air and screamed, "Jesus, you raised Lazarus from the dead. Please raise my baby." Feetwhite was so upset by this that he went into the kitchen. Arndt asked Hoverstock to lead everyone in the Lord's Prayer. But what about afterwards? Well, when the cops arrived at the Fernies later that same day to question the Ramseys, guess what they were doing? And guess who they were with? Let's go back to Perfect Murder, Perfect Town. Michael Bynum, John Ramsey's close friend and corporate attorney, now arrived at the Fernies' house. As he walked in, the family was kneeling in the living room praying with Reverend Hoverstock. Okay, and what about after that? Well, we know in the heady aftermath of their CNN interview, there was a spectacular PR event where the press and the people of Boulder got to see the Ramseys coming out of the church. It was a sort of look but don't touch, see but don't ask situation. And you kind of, in that footage, you see their pastor greeting and embracing them both at the door in the full view of press photographers. By the way, did you catch that this was a PR event? So if it was a PR event, was it choreographed with the consent and participation of the pastor of that church? Have you ever thought about that? And what was actually said inside the church that day? Let's go back to Bustle. Hoverstock has made some comments that give insights into his thoughts. After JonBenét's death, the Reverend stayed on at St. John's Episcopal Church in Boulder. Back in 1997, the Philadelphia Inquirer reported on part of Hoverstock's sermon that day, January 5th. The paper reported that Hoverstock discussed a dog-eat-dog world of talk shows and tabloids. Now, can you imagine, this is already 1 week or 2 weeks into the incident. That's how quickly the media cottoned on to this case. And they were already thinking about the tabloids and the talk shows. And Hoverstock called them dark, poisonous, and a pocket of evil. That was his view of the media and also the view he was, I guess, sharing with his congregation, and obviously bringing them round to that same sort of view that the media aren't to be trusted. He told the congregation not to judge too quickly, meaning don't judge the Ramseys too quickly, and also said don't live in that dog-eat-dog world, which is perhaps another way of saying, perhaps it's not good to engage with the media who are evil. And the Fernies were part of that congregation. And did the Fernies toe the line? And think about the Fernies just in terms of Patsy coming out of the church. Think about Barbara Fernie is chaperoning Patsy out of harm's way, but also out of the way of wagging tongues and pointing fingers. She's protecting them against this evil, being the evil media. But didn't the pastor do the same thing, not only in terms of that day, but in a broader way? And that raises the question, what happened after that, after January the 5th? What role did Hoverstock play beyond the immediate events on the day after Christmas and on January 5th? Well, it's actually pretty intriguing. He had a spy, a tabloid spy reporter in his congregation. And he also had to play the role as a kind of broker to get the Ramseys to talk to the cops, especially after the Ramsey lawyers said that they were done with the police. And so there's a whole narrative surrounding that. So what do you say? Would you like to hear more about Reverend Hoverstock as a much overlooked peripheral figure? If so, let me know in the comments and we'll dig deeper into Reverend Hoverstock's story. All right, that's it from me. I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you guys next time.